Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
Hello, Eli. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I got some free tickets to a concert tonight.
Oh, what concert?
It is a symphony, a string quartet.
I will.
It's the festival of music in my town, so I'm super excited.
Nice. I will have to admit, I expected you to say Rush.
That's fair.
I don't know. Are you a Rush guy?
I mean, not specifically Rush, but, you know, rock and roll, hair bands, I'm all, whatever. I'm into it.
Fair enough.
Especially like concerts. I feel like I can go to any concert and have a great time. Like, I might not listen to their music outside of a concert, but there's just, it's kind of like going to a sports bar. There's just the energy that surrounds you is just can capture and enrapture you in whatever the activity is.
I agree with that, but I think my downside is that I'm not a huge live music fan.
What?
Well, I got two problems with it. It never sounds as produced as the studio album does, which is expected, so I can let that one slide. But I hate it when live bands will change up the words to do something like diss another band or throw shade somewhere or just kind of play to the location.
That's the best. That's the best.
I don't enjoy it the same that other people do.
Does that mean you don't like your adventures tailored to your characters' backstories?
Truthfully, I have never been a player where somebody has tailored the game to my character's backstory to any degree. But yeah, I turn around as a DM and I do it all the time. So, it's fair. Anyhow, the Paladins of Podcast are back this week. Eli, I need to apologize to you as well as our audience because I completely forgot to tell everybody I was taking a small weekend trip and I was in Virginia. We totally had no way to really record. That's my fault. I dropped the ball. So, we're back and I was hoping to talk about this last week when I spaced out, and it's a callback to a previous episode. In fact, I believe it's the one that's right before.
Callback!
We spoke about ending a session mid-combat, and you said that you really enjoy it, and as an online space, it's pretty much saved. You're able to go right back to it.
Yeah.
And I am on the position where I don't really like to do this. But I intentionally started a combat towards the end of my gaming session, knowing that I would take a break midway through. Intentionally. I also didn't have the whole party there. So it's like, all right, so without the whole party here, we'll take a mid-combat break. And when we come back, everybody should be here. That way, the epic moment of mini boss battle will come to its full crescendo, and not everybody could show up. Not only could not everybody show up, enough people couldn't show up where the ones who did, we ended up playing Project Ninja Panda Taco.
Yeah, I've played that before.
Instead. I love the game. I do. But this really laments my frustration with ending combat at the... ending the session in the middle of combat.
So, I mean, how did you, like, what was happening in combat when you paused it?
So, I've developed a new monster, a new species of dragon for my game.
Cool. What are they called?
It's called a mana drake.
Ooh, okay.
And it draws parallels with the beholder.
Go on.
So,
it has 9 eyes?
No.
Tentacles?
No. However, instead of a breath weapon, it has an anti-magic cone. Its breath weapon is an anti-magic cone.
Okay.
That and its scales are enchanted with dispel magic. So physical attacks with magical weapons will cause a burst of dispel magic or chance of dispel magic.
Okay.
And
cool.
its design is to break magical weapons and resistances to non-magical weapons. So it feeds on magic. Non-magic can't really hurt it. And once it drains the mana, it books it.
So dragons normally hoard wealth, right? They normally hoard gold, silver, coins, magic items. If this dragon eats magic items, does it only collect coins? Does it create like a byproduct? Is there something valuable about this dragon?
This is where it pulls into the actual world of Animar itself. Now, I believe all the party now understands, both parties know, so I can talk about it more freely. In the world of Animar, I've mentioned how when they cast magic, everything sort of coalesces. You can see it as a mirage. And it all pulls from Animar Lucero, the Demi-Plane's creator, his life force. Due to an accident when he was younger, he found a way to tie them together. This particular dragon is hoarding magic. Literally the fabric and essence of the power behind magic. So whereas Animar's life force supplies magic, when it's used, it draws from Animar, this creature is directly eating from that life force.
Okay.
And the end game for him, if nobody can seem to defeat them, or if they decide to ignore the Mana Drake, is he's essentially the potential to be another battery to permanently replace the draining power within the world, therefore stabilizing.
Is there only one Mana Drake? There's only one?
There's only one.
Okay. All right. So it's more of a plot device rather than a new dragon species that you're...
Oh no. He's completely statted out because I plan on publishing the monster in both the original 1st edition Pathfinder as well as 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons in a monster book I'm hoping to release later this year, early next year.
How will it work for everyone's game if its abilities are specifically tied to Animar's setting?
Well, like most fantastic game masters, I will take my own monster, I'll steal what I want, and I will replace what doesn't work for my game with more general standardized spell abilities and scores, etc.
All right, so tell me those stats when you figure them out. But so how did you pause your combat?
Okay, so right after the Mana Drake had unleashed his breath weapon and
so they're fighting the Mana Drake right now.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, and we were down 2. I think we were down 2 players.
Okay.
So the party was not at its full potential, and the Mana Drake had swept in, made a few swift melee attacks, and unleashed its breath weapon. Therefore, in the 150-foot cone, pausing all magical abilities, deadening all of their most powerful abilities. The way I run people who are not there are they're just sort of there, but they're not present but unaccounted for. Without their magical abilities and being able to do a very little, they need somebody who can at least find a way to stave off something, such as give them health if they need it. And the guy who was one of the players that was missing was a wizard, I believe, a sorcerer. He was a sorcerer. So he's got access to some form of ability that will allow health regeneration if they need it. So right before they all decided to swarm in and get obliterated, I paused combat. I said, guys, I see where you're going to go, and this is going to be a high-end dangerous combat. I would like everybody to be here for it, and in order to do that, we will end here right at our 10 o'clock mark, and we'll pick it up when everybody returns.
Okay. And then let me ask you, between running that session and have you run the next session yet?
No, I haven't had. I missed the week because I was in Virginia, and this following game, too many people had been able to not make it that we did Ninja Panda Taco instead. So we've gone 2 sessions now without finishing up this combat.
So what are you doing to prep for the next session?
Well, I have a photo of the battle mat and where everybody was in correspondence to the dragon. I've got the dragon abilities statted out. I've got that all recorded, and I know what his next action is going to be because of the notes that I have from the end of last session. We're ending on a player's round. So his action was he wanted to charge in. As long as he wants to continue doing that path, we're good. The one thing I like about the potential here is that it gives them an opportunity to really strategize outside of game. So they were able to learn information about the dragon leading up to it, and they have encountered its most powerful abilities, so they should be able to strategize at this point.
And what about you, though? Are you going to strategize?
Well, I also took another play out of one of Eli's playbooks.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
I ran an experiment through one of my online games that I was trying, and that was just to not go easy on your party at all. So I overwhelmed my testing party on this concept, and they did well, but it was a high struggle. So I think what I'll end up doing for my strategy with the Manadrake, instead of overwhelming them with the sheer numbers of possible combatants, which I was considering, I will attempt to overwhelm with sheer number of action economy.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say that the way you paused is like, I mean, I feel like you always want to try to pause in like a narrative lull, and then you can start back up and just spike back into action. So I guess I would just recommend trying to, like, have you used any layer actions or actions around the environment? Because I love to try to add, like, when I have a time, like, to pause in between a session, I'll try to add and build more things into the environment or into specific NPC reactions to just make each, like, combat feel different week to week, even if it's the same one.
That's fair. That's not something I've really considered at this point or taken a lot of time to do. What I have done is really considered the ramifications of encountering the dragon and how it should truly proceed. It's given me time to flesh out more of a personality for it, which will potentially sway combat depending on how it goes.
I actually love that about pausing combat because, I mean, you just have the entire week to think about how that combat's going to go and really how the enemies are going to react or act. And I think it just gives you a lot of insight and prep into making those actions and reactions more engaging for the players. Because like at the table, when your monster's turn comes up, I mean, you're on a clock. You're like time's ticking. Like your players can pause, but a GM really, you can't really pause much to think about each monster's actions.
Right.
You just don't develop as much character mid-combat. And I think you can really get that in a combat that's paused or delayed or stretched out between sessions. You can get more role-playing out of the combats.
Yes, and I do like that. I find it to be a positive note. Like, because this isn't really my style or flavor, it's not like I'm doing this and I just disown every possibility. Because you're right, there are plenty of things that are fantastic about it. One thing that I liked but feel bad about in the hating of it is ending where we did right at the top of the round for player initiative, wanted to charge in. My thought is this is going to be just like a television show cliffhanger. You see him, he's charging in, we fade to credits. You know, we pick it up right back where the action starts. That's the hope.
Do you have like a narrative flavor text written out to start?
I will have one. I have not written it yet, but I will have one. And like I said, my hope was that they would kind of strategize, and they're not talking much in the group chat about anything. But we talked before about how they generally pick up 3 or 4 days before next game. So,
shouldn't your next game be? Aren't we in that period?
No. My next game is for that particular party is next Saturday, not this Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely saw a lot of chatter between my players in the last couple weeks as we paused the session, which was cool to see. And I even had a couple players be like, "This was really awesome! Like this combat's been super engaging," and they've just been very into it. It's had a good payoff.
Now this is the combat that you were talking to me just before we hit record, right? Where it's taken 3 sessions.
This third session, they managed to end the combat and got out. So,
all right. So we know that my position is, damn, I missed players. This is kind of stinky, and we've heard some of the benefits. How do you draw that out for 3 sessions? Like, I have a hard time feeling like I'm just breaking it in 2 sessions. But that means you started combat in 1 session. 1 session was like full combat, or at least heavy combat related to the singular combat. I'm going to use encounter loosely here. And then you finish that encounter scenario on the 3rd session?
Yep. Well, the party was attacking an orc village, which
that's right,
has like 200 orcs in it. And it's also a village, so it's pretty spacious. So the party kind of got into, I say it was all one combat, but it was really, a mad dash to attack and a fight for the first few buildings, and then maybe a second or two, not even like a short rest, but just a couple seconds before more orcs have stumbled into the field. And I designed it in a way so that the orcs would trickle in here and there, but there would also be kind of smaller waves of orcs that would arrive.
Okay.
My goal was to give the players the constant feel that there was pressure because they're attacking this entire village. So there's always going to be enemies that are going to show up. So they're always going to be kind of harassed and have to be on their toes. But it also gave them time to like get out if they wanted to before a bunch of these orcs arrived. And we went on for so long because the party was they'd just kill one wave of orcs and they'd just be like, oh, more orcs, let's go. And they just kept charging in. And I think I had it in a text somewhere, but they had a kill count of some like 60 orcs and 4 ogres of like various different ranks and
nice,
like strength orcs, and they just they cut their way through and then got eyes on the orc war chief and were like, yeah, maybe let's back off a little bit. And so then they pulled out to start a war against this orc village.
So they've successfully essentially started this war. They're going to have to go back and finish the orc chief. at some point?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that that seems like their intention.
All right. I guess perfect question is, what's your plan? Because they got to go back at some point. Is their plan to kind of regroup for 2 days and make another attack, or you just kind of pause that scenario and come back in a year?
Well, for the orcs, I'm really going to look at it in what would these orcs do, because they've lost like a third to almost half of their fighting force, and another portion of their force was out raiding a village, and so I thought really if these orcs are completely unbothered by the players, that raiding force is going to come back. And really, these orcs are going to stop raiding activities, and they'll just try to fortify their village that they've captured as much as they can. And then maybe small forays, and then start to build back up their power. But
I like that.
I think the players are going to attack that small warband that's out raiding the village, because guess what village they were raiding? The village that the party came from. So of course, that's going to be a little interesting thing. The players have latched on to this village boy named Colran, who runs around with a crossbow and helps them out, and so they're into this, invested in protecting this village, and
I dig it. So I dig it. That's great. I like the fact that when you mentioned the possible snafu of if they were to leave this raiding party alone, my first thought was very, I'll say, a Hollywood-style cliche. Because my thought is, they come back, they come to see a partially destroyed encampment, tribe, village, their homeland, like their homestead is kaputs. And so they swear vengeance, and instead of fortifying, they just go out on a mad dash for absolute retribution and revenge. So giving them the time to fortify really makes them feel more intelligent. Like, no, they've done this. We have got to protect our spot before we do anything.
Yeah, so. And what was I going to say? These orcs have like two kind of commanders. One's a shaman, and the other's the orc warlord. And the shaman is out with the raiding party, and I had them as kind of like two separate forces, each controlling the amount of information that they had been sharing with each other. And so the shaman was the one that had basically, these orcs were mercenaries hired by another enemy in my campaign to do this. And so the shaman has all that information about, them being hired, because the shaman's the one that can read. And so when the party attacks or fights this warband, they're actually going to get some of the plot hook, adventure seed, informational background information without even having to take on the entire village.
Rock on. I dig that quite a bit. Was there anything else that happened between your sessions that you would like to talk about? Anything interesting? Caught you off guard?
Just, I guess what was funny in one of the combats, they're kind of fighting in a mountain village, and the player had cast Levitate, and it allows you to move, but Hackmaster has a second-by-second combat, so the spell lasts like 10 minutes and allows you to levitate, and the player got, they nearly died, and so they just leapt off the mountain and just levitated off the side until they got down.
It ditched everybody.
Yeah, they just completely ditched everyone. They're like, I have a coward flaw and I can levitate. I'm just out of here.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So splitting the party, I've got a text chat going on with that player about what their character wants to do and how we're going to take care of that. So this character does like to risk themselves.
such as going alone, unabashed, into the mountainous wilderness sides. I like that. That's cool.
This
That's
is classic
cool.
Basil.
As you were talking about your players who just sort of dived off the mountain, it got me thinking about
Cowabunga.
It got me thinking about one of the players I had recently. And for those who haven't heard, I started running games online, and I primarily do a lot of 5th edition games, primarily because they're most popular and easiest to fill. It also gets my speed and knowledge up to snuff, because believe it or not, as much as I currently do use the 5e SRD through the Open Gaming Network, my knowledge and experience in 5e is not as great as I like it to be, so I have to run the games. I also direct a lot of my players to the Open Gaming Network for their SRDs. But anyhow, I had a player who had it already worked out with the party, so it was a surprise to me, not them, when they asked him for help and he simply refused. They said, hey, we need a little bit of help. Can you translate for us? And he simply says, no, and I'm going to walk away. And
okay,
that one instance right there ended up leading to 4 hours of near constant combat with goblins.
Oh my.
Yes, because they didn't want to approach it diplomatically because he felt no need to translate. It was goblin after goblin after goblin after goblin after waves. They'd walk through the marsh for a little bit. Waves of goblins, goblin archers, goblins on toads, goblin enclaves. And they finally get to the center, and it's a huge goblin tribe that I thought they were going to decimate, by the way, after they threw the Pearl of Fireball and took out most of them.
That's a great magic item.
It was. The end result was 2 of them ended up having to make death saves 2 or 3 different times, but there were no deaths, and they came out victorious. But
awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Just kind of crazy. You have that one player who has a personality quirk that is fun to work with until all of a sudden it works against the entirety of the party.
So what personality quirk were you using here?
Not me. It was the player.
Oh, this was a player that just said, I'm not translating?
Yes, he literally said, no, I am not helping. And he walked away. Because the party member did that, it resulted in 4 hours of combat with goblins.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And how did the players like it?
They were torn. They wanted to play seat of the pants, fly by night, and roll with whatever happened, but they also wanted to be semi-diplomatic. The diplomatic solution went out the window, so they wung it. Is that how you... No, they decided to wing it. Wung it. They just...
Wung it? I mean, it's past tense of them winging
right,
it. They wung it.
Right. So they decided to wing it completely. And it was fun. It was entertaining. They did well. But honestly, I can't tell you if they decided to be more diplomatic, it probably would have been less combat.
I mean, that's kind of the definition of being more diplomatic, right?
I think so. So it was entertaining.
Well, do you feel like it was a good session, or
so
you think you could have done it better, or what thoughts on it?
I think I could have done it a little bit better, and
because this was a paid game, right?
It is. So I started providing paid DMing services, which is a hot button topic. There are 3 huge taboos right now in the TTRPG space. You have paid DMs, AI artwork, and actually anything AI. And then pretty much if you're a huge 5e fan or not. But
so, do you mind if I ask about the format? So are you running a weekly ongoing session for some folks, or are you just one-shots?
No, they're one-shot drop-in games. So one of my favorite things about these drop-in games is that it allows for great improvisation. And I started giving a little bit more planning and thought based on hey, this drop-in game, I kind of want to run this type of scenario, this type of thing is going down. And I would let the players know before they give me character sheets. I'm like, hey, for drop-ins, I want to include some of these elements. What kind of things do you want to see? So that way we're playing a game that you want to play. And that works out really well.
So what do people throw out?
Somebody wanted a huge chase scene, like a chase-style Indiana Jones, Mad Max, constant tension. Somebody wanted a whole lot of combat in a session. Somebody wanted to use really, I guess they felt they were underutilized skills as a monk. So they wanted a lot more of a social interactions. And I've been able to accommodate all of these games thus far. Again, it keeps the need for improvisation and being on your toes. Like, you have to constantly be up there. And that can get hard after a while. Like, I was running, I did like 3 or 4. Essentially one a night for 3 or 4 days. And it gets...
Are you taking any adventure? Are you taking any notes? You should turn those into scenarios.
So this is what I've been doing. I've been taking what I've been laying out there, and I've been feeding it into my next planned adventure. So all of these one-shots are playing into the same world, and I'm using it to help develop the world itself around certain areas. So my notes are feeding into a bigger project, but the notes that I'm making are primarily for world building, not for scenarios or adventure building.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's different. It's neat, but it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. But I will have to say that I went with a style that I feel like I am efficiently good at. So when you play...
That's good to hear.
When you play online, and this is a new space for me. I generally don't do online games. You have virtual tabletop?
Oh, yeah, I have virtual tabletop.
All right.
I don't usually use it. I usually use like Roll20.
All right, but that's usually what you would do your battle mat on, etc., tokens, and all this other junk.
Yeah.
I haven't used Roll20 in a long enough period that the updates that they have recently made have confused the hell out of me, and I couldn't figure it out. So I had plenty of technical issues.
That's fair.
So I just stream the battle mat that is on my table for my players.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
How do people like that?
Nobody has complained about it yet. They think the setup is really neat. And I've got a primary top-down view. I've got me in the corner so they can see me. And then I also have a secondary side view so they can get a close-up, kind of over-the-shoulder camera shot as well. And they really dig it. It also shows off interesting minis, so you're just not flat tokens anymore, which is kind of cool. I'm more comfortable at the table, moving pieces around so I can see in tactile. And everybody else just sort of, once they catch on to who they are, like, they're like, hey, move me here. Boom, not a problem.
I think that is my one gripe. I love that, but I hate that you would have to manually move all the players' miniatures. That would drive me nuts.
It doesn't bother me too much. So, but it allows me to not have to worry about clicking buttons, moving things around in a mouse scenario. I don't have to build up big maps. I can use 3D printed terrain. I can use tabletop elements. All these things that I have for when I do in-person games, I can now apply directly to a online digital game. And I've installed the use of a lazy Susan with a 1-inch grid on it. So if I have something that's far out of reach, I don't even have to get up. I can just rotate the board. And I've marked north, east, west, and south on it. So all the player has to do is just know where their character is and give me a direction.
See, I think it might be a system difference. Because in D&D, you typically, unless you've got some monsters all in the same initiative, it's like one turn, you only have to move one person. But in Hackmaster, every second, everyone at the table could have a move action. Mm-hmm. So when the second clicks over, everyone is actively moving at the same time. And that's where... then you have to go back to asking one at a time, and it kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. I can understand that. I don't think that it is impossible to do the same setup for Hackmaster. I just think that you would eventually lose that intensity of the second-by-second combat. Not bad.
Although, without using like a mechanical tracker, like when you actually have live cameras, you can actually keep the intensity because you can say second by second by second. While usually if you use like an initiative system, it'll stop on whoever's next turn. So.
Right. So it's been a great learning experience. It's been incredibly fun. A lot of interesting players. Like some people really get into it. I will say I've had more people into their one-off characters than I have at the table with players that I've had for an experience long period of time.
Do you bring the characters? Do you give them character? Do they bring the characters?
I let them build their own characters because my one-shots are generally third level. And I run it at third level because I've got such great variety of things to use at that level. And when they are able to build their characters, it allows them to build at least the entry-level version of a character that they have been interested in playing but may not have the opportunity to do so. So this allows them to really experiment with what they want to do or have thought might be cool. It gives them a no-hassle zone. It is completely free of table BS, and everybody has picked up that my DMing style is to the point where, truthfully, if you decide to put all 20s in your stat block, whatever, we're going to roll with it. I'm going to manage it. We're going to do just fine. Like, you can't pull the wool over the eyes here because this one-shot is a balls-out game. So,
are you going to be incorporating these one-shot heroes into Animar's history and lore?
Animar, no, but I have considered putting them in the world setting that is currently being built for 5e, that I initially started with the Legend of the Pharaoh King and the city of Ancaris. So, it's all really pulling together. It's neat. It's neat when you start getting the big picture things done.
Yeah.
So
I ran a one shot one time, and someone brought, it was like a 14th level 3.5 adventure.
Okay.
And someone showed up with the challenge, the class rating change for like a centaur was like 4.
Okay.
Or something like that. And so they brought like a 7th or 8th level centaur monk, which was hilarious.
Love it.
Turned out they survived. But
those monster classes were brutal.
I love one-shot characters. You can just kind of build any weird combination that you could never... you probably wouldn't be able to get to that level in the first place.
Right.
Who knows?
Right. And I've thought about offering one-shots at higher levels, and that gives people to play really crazy builds if they want to. But it also requires a lot more work in character creation for a throwaway character. So... trying to find a good level, I'm going to try a few 5s. I might bump it up to 8s. I think the highest that I've seen for one-shots is 20, but that's for those ridiculous builds and people who just want to try to kill the party.
Do you have an NPC or like a class folder? Because I have this huge file folder of like PDFs of characters in various stages of their levels. Basically, whenever anyone plays a game at my table, like even if it's a campaign game, every time they level up, I'm going to take a snapshot of their class and character, and I'll just put it in my file. So if I ever need a pre-gen for that level, that character at that level is now in that document.
That's not...
Does a great job of like just building... I have players that'll just churn out characters. Sweet.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I have not done that. What I have noticed is I did open up, because this is a 5e game, I have opened up I call it an empty campaign on D&D Beyond. So they can link their characters through D&D Beyond. It allows me to see them as long as they're in the campaign. They don't leave. Most of them don't because they're throwaway one-shot characters. I can go back and check them out until they're gone. I might take that. I like it. I'd probably let them know, of course. Like, hey, this character.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I let him know. Yeah.
Fair.
But I mean, I don't think you'd really get in trouble for having someone's character.
No, but I mean, you don't want to burn a bridge personally either. Like, if you're DMing for people, you don't want somebody like, nah, you took my character and you put it in something else and I found out about it. I don't want to upset people on that route. So some people are pretty particular.
Like 2 people have not invented Stabby McStabface.
I get it. I know. As we have been permanent DMs for so long, we've kind of seen them all. So I get it. Now, talking about these, because they're general one-shot adventures, has me really geared up to hear a little bit more about the magazine article or the subscription magazine that you'd sent me prior to our chat today.
Oh yeah, Generic Adventure Magazine.
I gotta say, the name is fantastic because it is exactly what these are.
Yeah, they're each about, I think it's, a magazine's a strong word. They're
like 7
each
pages.
about 10 pages long, 10, 15 pages long, and they basically have one article. The first one's about speed writing and adventure. The second one is about backwards gaming, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. And the third one is spice up your campaign.
Spice up your campaign. I mean, that's what we always try to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I was
as long as you don't think pepper's spicy.
Oh, not too bad. I was reading. Not too bad. I was reading through the one that you sent me in. Speed writing adventure number 2. The don't settle for one conflict, make it 2. Kind of had me going a little bit because naturally, especially when you understand kind of writing tropes and character tropes, you introduce these conflicts that are automatically layered. And when I seen the make it 2, my first thought was, oh gee, that's not enough. Where some people's thoughts are, oh, I have to add more. How do you personally decide to add more layers of conflict? Like, that's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, I think part of it is like when this is for like a very quick adventure. Yeah. I think you always, you want to tie the players into it, but I think the best way to do it is try to get the players to suggest ways to tie their own characters into conflicts.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think you should have as many conflicts as possible. The more hooks you have into the party for an adventure, the better. I think that's kind of just what this is saying.
That's fair. One of the things that I had initially thought to was, again, that one-shot campaign we were talking about where the player, the party member, just said, no, I'm not going to help, and walked away. After they had slain the first few lowly goblins, one of the players was a bard, and he's like, I will play my lute for the sort of like a small ceremony of respect for them as we bury these goblin individuals. Knowing full well, by the way, that they were hunting an entire goblin enclave, and that there were more than likely other goblins in the area, in which playing his lute probably wasn't the world's greatest idea, but he did anyhow, and was promptly attacked by arrows. More conflict, right? That's what we do.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's the type of conflict they mean.
No. No, that was player and initiated conflict, though. So, like, they were, again, diplomatic or just kicking the door. I mean, the party's going to do what the party does. I just really like to make it conflict, add more layers of conflict somehow. You also allow
I think so. Like what they mean for conflict here is, I don't think they mean just like, I don't think they mean add conflict as in fighting. No. I think this is the conflict that they mean here is, like hating a restaurant owner. That's a call to action, or hating goblins as an entire species, and because of something they did in your backstory. I think that's a conflict hook that they're saying make it to.
Yep.
Engage the party as many times as you can.
I agree. I'm taking it very literally at the title. But again, you also don't mind a little bit of inter-party conflict, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Like, I like to have a lot of party cohesion, so that way they're not constantly fighting one another, which is always good, and adding a little bit of inter-party conflict's not bad, but I want to say, if I remember correctly, at times you actually welcome inter-party conflict.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and no relationship is perfect. Everyone doesn't always get along all the time. And I think having inter-party conflict is crucial. But I think it goes hand in hand with like party cohesion.
Right.
So you need your party to be tied together in a kind of interwoven web, but then also pulling at each other and kind of like straining and testing those bonds. I think that's when you really get character development. Yeah. I have some players who like send characters on side adventures, and as much as getting involved in the world around them, they also like to try to they'll try to research each other and get information. So like there's one character who has devoted themselves to a reptilian god in exchange for power, and another player is a little bit concerned about that, and so is actually doing research on that character with like some of their extra time, and it's really allowing, like, because there's so much interaction back and forth, it helps build both their characters together.
Right. So, question, as we are talking about the generic magazine, and it's add additional conflict, how do you add another layer for more conflict in that scenario? I mean, do we pump up totally, this reptilian god is more than willing to give you power as long as you keep doing this, and you play that against the other party member who's like, bro, not a good idea? Well,
I think it really depends on the type of campaign you're having. So like I have an open world campaign where they can really follow whatever leads they want, and the way that you add more conflicts is I have to engage, like put material into the world that they can interact with that helps engage not only the current adventure that they're on, but pulls them in that direction. So like when they're fighting these orcs, right? These orcs are a very forward threat. Like they're raiding villages, they got to take them out. But these orcs they've actually been hired to raid for a specific reason. And so that's a hook that's going to pull towards another larger villain, right? Who's orchestrating orcs and all that jazz. So that's a one way to get a hook. And, maybe they don't play onto it much, but they see this bad guy symbol once. And they're like, all right, okay. And then later they're going to have another adventure, right? And they see it again. And it starts building and compounding. And then there's all these different hooks where the players start to put together like, oh, wait, the same calling card is on all these adventures we've gone on.
Right. Okay. That's good. And it works. And as you're describing it, also the mastermind behind organizing these arcs. Jesus Christ. I am having tongue issues today. I keep stumbling over my own words. Having a mastermind moving pieces of these orcs really plays into generic magazines. Bad guy is key. So we know that having that intriguing bad guy, I mean, we always want that enigmatic bad guy who some people like them to be incredibly overpowered and just crazy, power hungry. I really like the sympathetic bad guy, the one that you can not only relate to, but you're like, maybe he's not such a bad guy. But that can be hard to play off with a lot of players because they're so interested in kicking in the door.
Yeah, sometimes I like those more subtle characters, but I mean, we're fantasy role playing. Like, let's have grandiose villains.
Yep.
You can still build in the macabre and in the smaller actions, but have it. I like to have the big bad guy be truly like a pillar of evil.
A Saturday morning cartoon.
There's no qualms. There's no like.
Right. Right, I get it.
Go murder Hobo.
I do a lot of that. I like some of my big bad guys to be total like Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe. Like, there's no mistaking this. This guy's Skeletor from He-Man. He is the epitome of that arc, that scene, that scenario's ridiculous, over the top bad guy. Because, like you said, high fantasy games. That's what we do.
I've been trying to focus more on revealing the bad guys earlier.
Really?
Because in an open game world, I feel like the party will often see a problem, try to take care of it immediately, right? Mm-hmm. So they, if they do see a villain or someone doing evil, they'll just be like, "All right, let's kill it now." And so, I don't want to like build in and the villain escaped into the game. I don't want to have to, I don't want to break the game rules to save a villain to just keep them around longer.
Sure.
So it can just be difficult to introduce villains that are more long-lived.
Do it the way I do. Make them way too powerful for when they meet them the first few times. Like, there's no way we can keep this guy. We don't want to encounter him. And again, the heroes are just too insignificant for the bad guy to really take care of right now. But like a good Saturday morning cartoon, they will grow like a thorn in the side to become a festering issue that he wishes he would have taken care of early.
Yeah, that's a good. I think I might try that when I can next introduce a villain.
I introduced like 7 of them at one time, so
yeah.
I mean, it was great fun, and people are like, "Damn, how are we going to take care of all of this?" I'm like, one at a time, and you're not going to get them all. I mean, you're going to have to deal with the fallout for there are things that are larger than you, but they're all having a good time. Now, you have a concert to get to today, so we have.
Yes, I do.
We've got to end on time.
Is that now?
It is, actually. We're hitting that wall, my man. I want to make sure you have plenty of time to get ready. Have a good time. Be safe tonight.
I'm out.
All right, buddy. Any words of wisdom or advice for our listeners as we close out the episode?
Kill a player character. I just do it.
Dig it. Guys, check us out on Facebook or online at epictablegames.com. Good night, everybody.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.